We often recommend rice cookers here on this channel. I mean, they are cheap. They're like 20 bucks. But it's undeniably true that you do not need a rice cooker. You can also easily just get a pot of rinsed rice, fill it up with water up to about your knuckle, and bring it up to a boil over about a medium-high flame. Once it's boiling, swap the flame down to medium-low and simmer it for about 15 minutes. Then shut off the heat and let it steam for another 10. You can do this. It's not difficult. You certainly don't need a rice cooker. But on that note, though, you also don't need a toaster. You can just get a cast iron pan and over a medium flame, just toast whatever you want till it's golden brown to your liking. And when in doubt, the oven is also right there. And speaking of ovens, you also don't need an air fryer. Literally just coat your ingredient with oil and cook it in the oven with the convection setting on. You also don't need a garlic press. All you need to do is slice off the root of the garlic, smash, remove the peel, smash it a little harder, and give it a chop for like 20 seconds. And another mainstay, you also don't need a microwave. If you want to reheat stuff, you can just put a bowl on a steaming rack, bring everything to a light boil, and then steam it for, like 10 minutes. And of course, no steaming rack, also no problem. You can also just put your bowl or plate on a pair of chopsticks, also does the job, and for the same reason, you don't need a bamboo steamer either. And with these same chopsticks, you also don't need to buy a whisk. Just hold them and whip your ingredient. It's really not very difficult. You also don't need a food processor. Just pound your stuff in a big bowl with a big club. Mortars and pestles are not exactly high technology items, and they can even be MacGyvered in a pinch. And relevant to this channel, you also do not need a wok. A pot or pan is completely fine, depending on the thing that you're making. And also, for Western food, you also don't need pots and pans. All you really need is just one wok. And if you have a wok, you also definitely don't need a deep fryer, though any wok or pot is completely fine. And speaking of, for that, you also don't need a little temp gun either, like we use. Just a pair of chopsticks looking at the bubbles, how they form, is definitely good enough for most government work. And for the same reason, I do know that the cooking internet really loves them, but you do not need an instant read thermometer. It's generally easy enough to tell when a protein is done by sight and touch. And if there's any doubt, just gash the thing. See inside, and you can leave the ugly piece for the cook. Further, you don't need a stand mixer. It's not that hard to slap and fold. It can even lead to better results. You don't need a pasta maker. A rolling pin can definitely get the job done. And of course, you also don't need to spring for a bottle opener. A spare lighter can definitely also do the job. You don't need a meat grinder. You just need a decent cleaver. And for ground beef, you definitely don't need one of those meat chopper things. You can also just break it up before it hits the pan with your hands like a normal person. But I know what you're thinking. And you also don't need kitchen gloves either. I'm pretty sure that's what soap and water is for. And you don't need that Instapot. All you need is pot plus time. And if you don't have time, just cut your stuff smaller. And you definitely don't need a crock pot for all the same reasons. None of this stuff you need. And honestly, if you find yourself really relying on it all, I would recommend trying to go without for a little bit. It can actually be a pretty good education. But the reason we add appliances, equipment, and gadgets to kitchens is to save time, save effort, and make your life easier. But what equipment we normalize is obviously cultural. Like the other day, Steph's parents, they were in town, and Steph, she was making a smoothie in a blender because she likes making smoothies. And her dad was kind of ribbing her, asking her why she couldn't just eat fruit like a normal person. And I mean, I don't know, if all you eat is Western food, if you don't like white rice, if the most common rice dish that you do cook is with red beans or pilaf or risotto, I would definitely agree that you need that rice cooker about as much as Steph's dad needs a blender for his smoothies. But at the same time, over the last couple of decades, I think that the West has kind of had this collective obsession with the food of East Asia, China, Japan, Korea, because, it's obviously quite delicious and there's tons of stuff here. And with migration flows, ingredients are also available. So I think a lot of people want to add these cuisines to their cooking, or at least elements of these cuisines, and I think that's probably why you're here. And I guess over the years that I've been online, at least, I've seen a lot of people either struggling with or asking a lot of questions about cooking white rice. And on this specific topic, it feels like practically the entire continent of East Asia speaks with one voice. Get a rice cooker. They're like $20. You put water and rice into the thing, you press a button, and you get white rice. It frees up a burner. It importantly frees up a brain. It's a really useful tool. And so sometimes when I see people online, like on Reddit or something, really insisting on the pot, it can feel to me, I don't know, a little stubborn. Maybe that's unfair, but it's like, all right, champ, I'm sure that you can open a beer bottle with a lighter. But if that thing explodes in your face, I am going to laugh at you. Like, comedians have made careers out of smaller screw-ups. But at the same time, I also don't want to be overly prescriptive either. You know your kitchen, you know the food that you cook, you know your abilities better than I know any of these three things. Cooking is always and everywhere something hyper-local and super, super vernacular. So if you've never tried the stovetop, I would suggest that you try it. It can be really handy if you're traveling or if you're outdoors. And if you've never used a rice cooker, I would suggest that you buy a rice cooker. Again, they are very, very cheap. The price of just 2 of these meat chopper things. If it collects dust, toss it. Don't keep stuff that you don't use. But it's a mainstay in enough of Asia that if you like the food from this swath of the world, it's definitely not a crazy purchase. And I'm going to continue to recommend that beginners get one.
So I know some of you guys probably clicked in this video and hoping for something more practical than a 7-minute Chris rant on why kitchen equipment exists. So in the Substack post, free as always, we also pen down a little bit of rice cooker purchasing guide, like what to look for when you are getting a rice cooker. Is fancy rice cooker necessary, or different kinds of functions, etc. But if you are just looking for something very straightforward, simple suggestions, I also wouldn't waste your time. So if you are a single person or a couple, I'll suggest something like a little bit less than 1 liter rice cooker, something the pot that's removable, just very bare bone. And for families, I'll suggest something probably around 3 liters or above, also basic, with a bigger pot that you can maybe do more rice or maybe sometimes steam some things in it. In the Substack post, we explained our logic. But remember, you can always upgrade later if you want, if you find the rice cooker being very useful to your day-to-day cooking. And as always, a huge thank you for everyone that's supporting us on Patreon. And of course, subscribe for more Chinese cooking videos.